Other interesting cultural news, you have Matt Walsh going viral because he's saying that gays should not be able to adopt. In his recent interview with Tucker Carlson, as youth might say, based, he is wearing, of course, the cliche, well, was it the trad man or Chad? Flannel shirt. Though I would argue all good men always suit up, but that's just me. This is credited to Tucker Carlson Network, hashtag TCN Network on X. And it's a question before, but it says, should gay couples be able to adopt? Matt Walsh and Tucker Carlson discuss. And, well, shoot, his voice is infinitely better than mine. So it's only about a second long without too much further ado.
Gay adoption. This isn't the only argument against it, but I think it is a worthwhile argument. There's never been a society anywhere on earth, anywhere period, where they have had two men in a romantic relationship starting a family. That's never existed. It's always been a man and a woman start a family, or in certain ancient civilizations and even some primitive ones today, you might have a man and several women. You might have polygamy.
That was a pretty common feature, I would say.
Common, certainly common. But you never had, and why do you have polygamy? I don't support polygamy, but there was a logic to it, especially in ancient times.
Yes.
You got to create people. And the whole point of the family is to make children and care for them. A family that's headed up by two gay men it's an abomination. It's just,
it never happened before, and now it's happening, and that's why we call it progress, right? This is progress. It's something that was never been done.
Yeah. It's progress in the way that cancer progresses.
Now, the real question is this Matt Walsh's last public appearance as a Daily Wire employee? I say that because the Daily Wire, the amount of people that speak on, well, I was going to say their talent pool is becoming less and less diverse, so to say, as they, lost Candace Owens, then famously they lost Brett Cooper. Matt is the most, I don't want to say bombastic, but in terms of going against the mainstream media narrative, and I'd say a big cultural narrative in the United States, Matt Walsh is much more of a contrarian, though what he says is really just mainstream from 1990. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, shoot, our fashion was kind of questionable in the 90s, or as youth might say now, sus, which I think means suspicious. But nevertheless, there are some people that are viscerally irate, and a lot of the Daily Wire, not colleagues, but their friends, like Dave Rubin at The Blaze. Dave Rubin famously is a gay man who adopted a child with surrogacy, which is one of the main things that Matt Walsh is vehemently against, which is actually becoming more and more common in the United States, where you, not to be too rudimentary, but you rent out a woman's uterus, or you rent out her, try to keep this moderately family friendly, you rent her out and you pay her money and you get a baby at the end, which is also famously what Pete Buttigieg and his husband did as well, which is even more mentally vacuous when you consider they adopt or they pay for surrogacy, and then Pete Buttigieg sat in I forget you call them maternity beds, but yeah, he sat in the bed as if he delivered it with his husband. He also disappeared from his job for 6 months and no one realized he was gone, showing how useless he is as an employee. But I partially digress. This got about 566,000 views and 1.8 thousand likes. One of the top comments comes to us thanks to Johnny Flyover, saying, quote, "It was a slippery slope from that to surrogate babies, renting out a woman's womb for 9 months and then buying the baby. How is this different from prostitution and child trafficking? Looking at you, Rubin report." Whoa, calling Dave Rubin right out. Which again, Dave Rubin is probably the most famous conservative who's also gay. He's famously has his own daily show on Blaze Media, and that was probably one of the biggest controversies, probably his whole, I would argue maybe his whole career, in terms of really divide the conservative party. A lot of people that, people used to consider, hardcore conservative, they would acquiesce, or maybe people would feel they acquiesce and say, oh no, it's okay that Dave did that, it's all good. But the traditional conservatives, they didn't, which is why I do wonder, is Matt Walsh's time at the Daily Wire more and more coming to an end? Because he's saying more and more things that go against the things that Ben believes in, famously the co-founder of the Daily Wire, and still the top talent by a number of subscribers. You also have the Soy Pill saying, quote, "I would rather have 2 gay dads than one Matt Walsh." Contrarian statement right off the bat. That got 278 likes. You also have Bing Lens Ben saying, quote, "I have to disagree with Matt Walsh. Having been a court-appointed special advocate for foster kids, a loving home is always a better solution than living in a state care. In Texas, some kids have to sleep with CPS agents' offices because there aren't enough foster families." That got 50 likes, which I'd also argue that argument, or that statement rather, does also make the advocacy of maybe we don't need surrogacy. There's a lot of kids who do need adoption as well. We might argue for another topic for another time, but you also have A.B. Zig Country saying no nuclear families and children's families and churches need to step up. I got no likes? Really? Poor guy, that was a good point, or it's good. I'll give him a like. poor SOB got no likes. Like one of my videos, sometimes I get no likes at all. Sometimes I get dislikes, which any constructive feedback is always appreciated. Sean Mackerberry says, quote, "The progress is the way the cancer progresses. That's a great line and completely appropriate here. Getting 53 likes. Fist Punch Skull, guess you know what he does in his free time, says gay couples should not be allowed to adopt a dog. What? Getting 22 likes, which I don't know if that's that topic I didn't know about. Is adopting dogs I mean, I understand why there's like culturally there's a big talk about this, but I know that was a controversy as well. Tom Haggard says, why do gay couples have nicest yards? Getting 5 likes. Punk Daddy says they should be able to adopt kittens. Getting 10 likes, which, yeah, those things are mostly useless. I don't think anyone cares about cats. They don't even know you exist. But dogs are always better, obviously. Charm Quark says, I don't think this is the most important thing to fight for. If Republicans want to win over and over, don't push away centered and liberal people who are willing to vote red. Our country has been way to worry about than gay couples adopting. Getting 25 likes. Though I would also argue acquiescing from their core principles are why so many people don't like Republicans, because they become rhinos, pejoratively known as Republicans in name only. Same thing with churches. As they try to go more mainstream and move away from their core values and morals, less people started to tune in and donate and go there because they wanted to go for the mass media. They want to go for the mass reach. So many people, a lot of the purists, a lot of the people who really believe in the founding ideals of the church, not in a somewhat tangent topic, they stopped going because churches started to preach things that, quite frankly, are going against the Bible. Now, you also have Frontier Brown said, quote, no, there are natural consequences for choices we make, and innocent children should not be thrust into their unnatural choice. Getting 18 likes. Actually surprised no one's bringing up the rates of child abuse. But yeah, we'll see it again. Matt Walsh getting roasted a little bit on this post. And I mean, culturally speaking, do you think the average American believes that gays should be able to adopt a child? It is interesting how they always want to adopt boys, but it's one of those things where, yeah, in the 90s, I would argue like no one thought that. I mean, back then, people would always also say, let's keep it in, no one cares what you do as long as it's in the bedroom. But let me know your thoughts, because as always, be fascinated to hear what you have to say. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to tune in today. Again, trying to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the month. So if you can click that button, I greatly appreciate it. Also, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, or comment. It's a great way to give me some additional feedback, letting me know how I can make the show better and better. Lastly, don't forget to take time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.